Hello and welcome to this video storytelling session of Our Future, Our Voices, a virtual summit by, for, and with young people, hosted by the International Youth Foundation with its premier partner, FedEx. Our session today is entitled Digital Activism, Hashtags for Voice, Visibility, and Visions of Legal Equality, drawing on the Reform 53 campaign of the Commonwealth Youth Gender Inequality Network by the Equality and Justice Alliance under the Royal Commonwealth Society. My name is Tanya Lalman. I am from Mauritius and I am the legal lead of the Reform 53 campaign. I will start by providing you with an overview of the campaign, and thereafter I will explain how to maintain campaign engagement in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining me in this session today are two of my colleagues. Firstly, Ms. Nafisha Richardson from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who is the Caribbean lead of the Reform 53 campaign. She will explain the techniques we used to overcome the digital divide in campaigning. And we also have Tushar Kantibedia from Bangladesh, who will share the techniques for inclusive campaigning approaches for minority groups. Without further ado, I will explain our key campaign aims for Reform 53. So Reform 53 is an advocacy campaign launched in January 2020 by the Commonwealth Youth Gender Inequality Network, with the aim to lobby heads of Commonwealth governments to commit to reform laws that discriminate against women, girls, and LGBT people. We have five main areas of focus, namely decriminalizing consensual same-sex relationships, reforming consent laws on forced marriage and removing clauses that differ to customary laws, ensuring provisions in law for abortion so that children are born by choice and not by chance, ending workplace discrimination for women, girls, and LGBT people, and increasing political participation for women, girls, and LGBT people. So we started our campaign in January before COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. So at that point, we were able to carry out our campaign in person, and we hosted a number of events and met with high-level officials so that we could lobby them to commit to reform those laws. Providing further details about our campaigning before COVID-19 is Nafisha Richardson.
Hey everyone, my name is Nafisha Richardson and I am the founder of Spark SVG, a youth organization in St. Vincent and the Grenadines aimed at encouraging young people to ignite positive change in their communities. As a campaign lead in the Reform 53 campaign, the team was forced to use innovative and creative strategies to overcome many of the challenges that we face through digital activism. After all, trying to connect leaders and CSOs and religious leaders and young people from across 54 countries is no easy task. So we used three main strategies to overcome these challenges. They are cross-border management, connecting with digitally disconnected audiences, and building coalitions. So our first major challenge was trying to manage the team. The campaign leads are from across the globe. We have leads from St. Vincent, Barbados, Papua New Guinea, Kenya, Mauritius, Malta, Nigeria, Botswana, Cameroon, Sri Lanka, Uganda, Tuvalu, and Bangladesh, just to name a few. So with this, you can imagine that it'll be very difficult to try to organize and synchronize our activities. We first tried to assign leads from 5 Commonwealth regions, as well as persons to manage our internal and external communication. We had persons in charge of legal advice and social media managers. This way, we ensured that no region was left behind and that our advocacy was structured and organized. And to keep everyone on track, we hosted regular meetings and check-ins to make sure that everyone is okay, because as you can imagine, advocacy can be very draining and time-consuming, and to also ensure that we were always on target. As it pertains to connecting with digitally disconnected audiences, we realized that globally, the present-day reality is that so many people do not have access to the internet. This meant that we had to ensure that our outreach wasn't just online, but was in person so that we connected with everyone. One successful example of the way that we executed the campaign without the internet, for instance, was led by campaign lead Winnie in Uganda, who at a local seminar conference promoted the campaign to thousands of young people from across her country. And finally, coalition building. This final strategy that we used to overcome the challenges caused by digital activism was through the use of other organizations that had similar goals as us. We had to align with these established organizations because they had similar values and goals as we did, and it really helped us to further our message. For instance, we partnered with the Commonwealth Equality Network, TSEN, for a shared advocacy week in London just in January. Because our goals were aligned and we were trying to achieve the same things, we merged our asks with the most relevant and cross-border issues to ensure that we spoke with a united front. And through this, we had the opportunity to speak to high commissioners and other high-level dignitaries from countries like Belize, the Bahamas, Canada, Australia, Malta, New Zealand, Barbados, and Australia, just to name a few. So by merging our acts, we really presented that united front, and we were better equipped to speak to these high-level dignitaries, and we actually got very positive responses. So just to conclude, when we look at strong movements like the Black Lives Matter movement or the Me Too movement or even our Reform 53 campaign, it's clear to ensure that we have positive and meaningful impact and meaningful change, a variety of very creative strategies must be employed. We recognize that digital activism is not an easy task, but with the right passion and good planning, your team is bound to be successful.
So, following Nafesha's explanation, here are a few pictures illustrating our campaign activities before the COVID-19 lockdown. On the top left of the screen is a picture of David, our Pacific lead for the Reform 53 campaign, and he is with the UN Secretary General's envoy on youth. He met with her to explain our campaign and managed to solicit her support in our lobbying activities. On the bottom left of the screen is a picture of a meeting we held with stakeholders during our campaign launch week in January in London, where we shared techniques of campaigning and possible ideas for partnerships so that we could campaign jointly for equal rights for women, girls, and LGBT people. You will see on the same picture that we were projecting one of our campaign films on the screen so that they have a better insight of our activities. And the biggest picture on the screen is one of the pictures taken by Winnie, our campaign activist in Uganda, which is precisely what Nafesha mentioned earlier. So she held a conference in her country, which was attended by thousands of young people, where she shared the campaign objectives and managed to get her to join our campaign by drawing the logo of our campaign on their palms and taking a picture with our campaign banner. Unfortunately, in February and March, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, and we had to adapt our campaign accordingly. So some of our campaign strategies were to still hold in-person meetings while observing physical distancing, but we also shifted to online campaigning. Coming up next is Tushar explaining how we adapted our campaign to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hi, My name is Tushar and I am from Bangladesh, and I am the campaign lead of the Reform 53 campaign in Bangladesh. As you have already known about the Reform 53 campaign and its objective, now I am going to tell you about the techniques and the skills that we have used to promote our campaign during this COVID-19. This campaign is particularly challenging for the youths because we are talking about laws that are very old and also discriminatory. Also, we are talking about such laws that are not easy to change just because of the society and the people's point of view. And also, there are lots of religious beliefs and customs that actually forbids to change these laws. Countries like Bangladesh, Bhutan, Pakistan, Nepal, and India is particularly very rigid about their social belief and religious rituals and customs. So in these sort of countries, it is very hard for all of us to address these discriminatory laws and also ask or demand to change it. As a youth, we believe that we have power, but we also need support. So as part of our campaign to gather support, to be more empowered, we contacted different feminist organizations, youth organizations, and asked them to give us support so that we can amplify our voices together. As part of our empowerment process, we contacted different influential people and entity, and especially British government entity, because these colonial laws are actually introduced by them, and we believed that if we can incorporate British government's entity within our local context, it will be very easier for us to get support and create public positive opinion. In Bangladesh, we contacted the local British High Commissioner, Mr. Robert Chatterson Dixon in Dhaka, and we asked him to support the campaign, and without any doubt, he gave his hand to support our campaign, and you'll be very happy to know that he gave our time to support the campaign just when the lockdown started in our country. So it was very hard for all of us to gather and disseminate the information and show support for the campaign, but he was so enthusiastic about this campaign that he gave us time and he helped us to promote the campaign.
Well, what I would do is look at the history of LGBT communities in the UK. If you go back a couple of generations, the LGBT community was subject in the UK to a lot of discrimination, and over time, starting in the 1960s, that changed, and now the LGBT community lives a life of complete legal and I think very largely social equality in the UK, and we in the UK think that's the right way to do things, and I hope that example is one that might be useful for the LGBT community here in Bangladesh, who, by the way, I greatly respect for their courage, because I think it is a tough row to hoe being a member of a minority community in a country where there isn't wide acceptance. I think history and examples elsewhere show how that can change. But it's obviously tough being in the early stages of that change. And so I have huge respect for the LGBT community here.
Not only this, we also contacted a different UN entity so that they can also support. And also we created different ways to disseminate our information. For example, when the lockdown started, before that, we created lots of materials and visual graphics so that we can promote the campaign throughout the year, no matter whether we'll be able to meet physically or not. And we can prevent the negative impact of the COVID-19 on our campaign. We created leaflet, we created different sort of emails and send those leaflets and emails to different organizations and in different social media pages so that they can get to know about our campaign and they can also show support to our campaign. Finally, we asked different youth organization heads to show support in our campaign by drawing a palm equality sign in their palm and take a photo and send them to us so that we can start displaying those photos country-wise in different occasions, and that was the key techniques that we have taken to promote our campaign. That's all. Thank you so much, and I hope that you will also support in our campaign.
As Tushar mentioned, we had to adapt our campaigning activities to the COVID-19 pandemic. I will now illustrate how we managed to maintain campaign engagement in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So one of the techniques we used were newspaper features. I reached out to a number of media houses and requested them to feature our campaigning stories. This picture shows an example of a cover story for the Reform 53 campaign in a newspaper with a wide readership. So it enabled me to reach a number of people in Mauritius and to raise awareness about the need for legal reform. This not only serves to inform people about the rights of people who are not being respected, but also to amass civil society support for the campaign and also to show how young people are making their voices heard. Another picture that illustrates how we managed to keep up with the COVID-19 lockdown was through this blog post. So this is a blog post on the Sex Rights Africa Network website. The Sex Rights Africa Network is focused on advocacy for sexual, reproductive, and health rights in Africa. So while I am based in Mauritius, which is part of the African continent, I tapped into this network to reach out to a number of people across continental Africa to raise awareness about the need for legal reform in Commonwealth countries on the African continent, and also share resources with them so that they could push their own campaign forward and also raise awareness about our own campaign in the same vein. So in that situation, I managed to create a win-win situation for Sex Rights Africa Network and Reform 53 campaign. Another way in which we managed to raise awareness about the need for legal reform during the COVID-19 lockdown was through public statements. The picture shows a public statement issued by our activists in Malta, where abortion is not allowed in any circumstances. So in her statement, she illustrated the need for the right to abortion so that women are allowed to make a choice. And she also illustrated the dangers of the present circumstances where women are not allowed to choose to have an abortion. Another way to maintain engagement online during the COVID-19 pandemic was through webinars. And we specifically chose international commemoration days. For example, on the International Day of Action for Women's Health, we held a webinar with gender activists and discussed on safeguarding women's health across the Commonwealth. So we shared techniques of advocacy, we shared about the difficulties we were facing, and we came up with common solutions for our respective campaigns. In the same vein, during Pride Month, we held a webinar entitled More Pride, Less Prejudice with LGBT activists across the Commonwealth, and we also had a guest from Latin America so that she could also share her experience outside of the Commonwealth, and we managed to make a transfer of knowledge and resources from the Commonwealth and outside of the Commonwealth so that we could all further our agendas for legal equality. So in this sense, you can also tap into networks of other activists and other organizations whose missions are aligned with yours and seize the opportunity of international days to raise awareness on the issues that you're working on. Another way of raising awareness about your campaign is through partnerships. So for example, on the left of the screen, you will see a picture of me taking part in the Why Abortion, Why Now campaign of She Decides. In that way, it enabled me to not only foster a relationship with She Decides, but also raise awareness about the work that is being done at the Commonwealth Youth Gender and Equality Network. Another way is to take part in other campaigns that are being held by other organizations. For example, the Youth Coalition published a report on the International Safe Day of Abortions. And in that report, I submitted our safe abortion video of the Reform 53 campaign, and the video got selected for publication. So, since the report has a wide readership, it allowed me to reach to a bigger audience for the video, and since the report was published online, we could also include links to our own social media pages along with the social media accounts of the Reform 53 campaign. So this is also a way to boost engagement and interaction with your targeted audience. Another way of reaching out to people while observing physical distancing is through other media sources. For instance, one of our campaign leads, David, who is based in Papua New Guinea, has a podcast. And on his podcast, he shares about the activities that we carry out for Reform 53 and invites guests to share their views on how we could further our actions and also interacts with them in ways where we could boost awareness about the need for legal reform. With this, we have reached the end of our session. We hope that this has been enriching to you, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us for any questions that you may have. Our links are available on the Summit platform, and we look forward to engaging with you. Goodbye.